Then they sat down and kept watch over him there. Those are the words written by Matthew in Matthew chapter 27, verse number 36, concerning those people who were present the day that Jesus was crucified. You know, human nature doesn't really change. People today are much like they always have been. People in the day of Jesus were much like we are today. We tend to think that we're different from others, but really that's not the case. People in the day of Jesus were just like we are. And when we think about that crowd that was present when Jesus was crucified, I think we can safely say that humanity was gathered together beneath the cross of Jesus. In this series of studies, I want us to examine some of the people who were present when Jesus was crucified. I want us to look at some of the events and some of the activities that were carried on at the cross, and to do so with a view of examining our own heart and life so that we can be better followers of Jesus. And if you will allow me to do so at times, I may want to broaden the scope just a bit beyond the actual 6 hours that Jesus was on the cross, to include some of those events that took place in the hours prior to his crucifixion. From the time that Jesus entered the Garden of Gethsemane until that moment that he cried, "It is finished," and gave up the ghost. And as we look at these people and these events, we will have an opportunity to see ourselves beneath the cross of Jesus. As we introduce this study, I want us to consider some of the motives that were present among the people who were there at the crucifixion, because not everybody was there for the same reason. And I think you will find, just as the crowd represents humanity as a whole, so these attitudes and motives that were present reflect a broad spectrum of people and how they relate to God. For example, some were there by command. That is, it was their duty to be there. I'm thinking about the soldiers that actually crucified Jesus. Listen to what John writes in John chapter 19 in verse number 23 beginning. When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his garments and divided them into 4 parts, 1 part for each soldier, also his tunic. But the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. So they said one to another, "Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it to see whose it shall be." This was to fulfill Scripture, which says, "They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots." So the soldiers did these things. Now these are the soldiers that had scourged him, the soldiers that had mocked him. You remember they put the scarlet robe on him. They plaited a crown of thorns and put on his head. They gave him a reed to act like a scepter. And then they took him out and crucified him. I don't think that we can say they had any personal feelings against Jesus. They were simply doing their job. They were simply fulfilling their duty. And I fear that many in our day are like these soldiers. It's not that they hate Jesus. It's just they're simply indifferent toward him. Many in our world today are satisfied with what they have. It's kind of like, I like my life like it is. Don't bother me with religion. Of course, life doesn't always stay the way we want it to. Now, if you ever needed a validation of that fact, welcome to the year 2020, right? Things change. Things that you might never consider are going to happen. And so that wonderful life that you're enjoying may get turned upside down. And beyond the strange events of this year, you could lose a loved one. You could lose a job. You could lose your health. And at times, that point is driven home that you need something more than the material things that you have in the here and now. And so here are soldiers beneath the cross of Jesus. And what did they take away from the cross? Ripped up garments. At least one of them has a tunic that's woven completely without seam, but at a place where redemption is available, and at a place where you can find peace with God and man, they get ripped up clothes. It's just like people today who are content with the day-to-day life that they have, when life with Jesus could be worth so much more. You may know people like this. You may be a person like this. You may be thinking, I like my life like it is. I'm not really interested in religion. And the challenge for those of us who are followers of Christ is to help people like that to see what it is they're missing. To see there's more to life than part of the clothing that you get to take away. There's more to life than just what we have here and now. Or, as I think of those soldiers, you might actually think of people who are turned off from religion because of what they have seen in religious people. It may be that what they think of Jesus is based on what they see in what I want to call counterfeit Christians. They've seen a misrepresentation of Jesus. They've seen that from people who don't really live by what Jesus taught, and in lives of people who don't really model what Jesus lived on this earth, and yet they claim to be followers of Jesus. And as a result, these people are turned off from Jesus because they don't really see him. And you've probably heard the idea expressed this way: well, if that's what religion is all about, then I don't want any of it. Many in our world are turned off from religion because of hypocrisy and because of the contradiction they see in the lives of those people who claim to follow Jesus. And so you and I need to be very careful to make sure we're not that counterfeit Christian that turns others off, that we are honest with the text and that we model in our lives what Jesus would have us to live. And so whether it's indifference or whether it's people who turn against religion because of what they've seen in some religious people, there are many in our world today just like these soldiers, and they don't take away from the cross what they really need, even though Jesus went there to provide it for them. And when I said at the beginning, humanity was gathered beneath the cross of Jesus, that includes you and me. Each one of us is represented by the people who were there, maybe a combination of those who were there at the cross. And as we draw this lesson to a close, I want to ask you, are you represented by these soldiers? If you are you willing to look at the cross differently so that you see what he offers there and what it could mean in your life? I hope you'll stay with me over the course of these studies and use it as an opportunity for us to examine ourselves as we look at those beneath the cross of Jesus. And until next time, may God bless.